and Sherritts with PlantMaker Inc. And we make easy to use indoor gardening systems for the average home user. So just real quick kind of life cycle background. These are the problems that I learned about some years ago that face the globe as far as food production. And so from 2018, 2050, we're gonna have less land, we're gonna have higher, bigger population, and more people are gonna live in cities. We're gonna be closer together. So this creates a lot of logistical problems for how we grow and move our food around the world. So I started with a carousel concept where basically a vertical carousel grows plants and it provides a high density amount of production in a small footprint. Put a lot of money into that, into the IP, into the prototyping. Went to CES in January this past year, and from that we had a very good feedback. But we learned a lot about who our customers were and really what they wanted more than just kind of a refrigerator-sized, complex vertical carousel growing system. So from there, we thought that, again, our market was just urban dwellers, people lived in cities. We found out there was more people that just lived in rural areas that it took forever to get to the store to be able to buy something, or people lived in food deserts, lived in cities. And we also figured out that the price point was a little bit too high and they wanted something with a smaller footprint. So that's just to give you a little bit of background. We had our first working prototype in April. It was made out of just a basic kind of shelf, and then from there we were able to develop it into a more sleek, what we feel elegant and even smaller design. So the main problem is, right now if you just look at it just closely, home gardening. So climate, we only usually have about 5 months of growing per year. Weather, it's too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry. Location, so do you have enough space? Is the soil good? Do you live in deserts, things like that? And obviously the other, the barrier is time. It takes a lot of time. I don't know if you guys have ever grown your own garden. It's not something that you just can set and forget. You got to tend and take care of it. Pest and disease, and then just general expertise. What happens if plants catch disease, when to harvest, when to plant, things like that. Indoor gardening, it's really technical and cumbersome. So if you guys have ever done anything with indoor gardening or hydroponics, there's a lot that goes into setting it up, pH levels, things like that. It doesn't really produce a whole lot with the current models that are available. Tabletop units, this is one right here. You can see how small they can be. And they're made out of plastics and other synthetic materials that we don't feel is the best way to grow food in. And they're not, no one's really come up with a high production all-in-one kind of model. So this is our solution. So PlantMaker, it's high production. It's in about 1 square foot of space. It comes in, we plan on providing in an array of different colors and finishes, and it's a long-term, savings to the user based on average, consumption of, plants. And it's just really easy to use. Basically, the way that it works, you plug it in, you add water to it about once a month, you push to start, and then there's app integration if you want to get more technical and be able to monitor the results. From there, you just replace the grow pods themselves about every 3 to 6 months. The main differentiator in technology is we're taking a wide array of existing technology and compacting it into this unit here. And then we're also integrating sensors and IoT technology to be able to help it have optimum growing environment for each user. We work with domestic-based suppliers and are developing our custom-made LED system that mimic a more natural lighting cycle for growth. And again, it's just in a very small footprint compared to other options. And when we launch, we want to go with 4 main revenue streams, kind of incremented out. So the first thing we want to do is have our demo units on site, because we found that it's a better user experience when somebody can actually look at it, see how it works, see the plants growing, and understand the system overall. Selling direct to consumer, the pods themselves, and longer term live plant sales, which is a huge strategy from the end vision standpoint. So our average consumer, again, will be geographically isolated individuals, people live in cities, health conscious individuals. We also found that just brand aware, image conscious businesses, so hotels, coffee shops, restaurants, even events. People just want to be able to display this unit because it kind of goes with their aesthetic and their vibe of, you know, environmentally friendly and be able to be self-sufficient and sustainable. So the market is, a lot went into the research with this, and it was confirmed through other sources, but overall market for just indoor gardening alone is 23 billion. And then it has other aspects that I spoke to you earlier with the Internet of Things, and then ILBS, which is location-based services. So that will be integrated longer term if you want to look to monetize on that later down the road. This is the market composition. I don't know if I need to block that out or not, but so this goes through. It's not the full market of each one. We take a percentage and narrow it down, and so I guess it's a bottom-up method for the market. A lot went into that research overall, and that's based on 2017. These are some of our competitors, and so you can see that we have in-home devices, and I recognize some of those names. Vertical farming that are popping up all over the country now. These are still very brand new, and then some startups here. I feel that the opportunity is an all-in-one solution. So to be able to provide direct-to-consumer, so they can sustain themselves individually, and then be able, from a strategic level, to come back and provide plant sales. If you go right now on your phone, try to go to Amazon and buy a live plant via mail, you can't do it. You can do it in the summertime, but you can't buy plants right now. You can't get a live basil plant without going to the store. So if we're able to start off from a consumer market and then strategically come back on a commercial end, we feel as though we'll be the leader with our vision. It's pretty simple. We just want to help more people grow more plants in more places. That's it. This is future optimization. So again, kind of circling back to the vertical farming concept and commercial, where you can have a 3-story unit that grows 3,200 plants. A lot of growers like that. It reduces staff, it reduces a lot of costs and risks overall. Looking into a networking model that will subsidize with very specifically located growing partners in our areas. Going into things like plated to be able to integrate the plants that we're used to grow into recipes, so people can get more comfortable with obviously using the plants that they're growing. Pop-ups, grocery stores, monetization on the IoT and ILBS. Looking at medical devices, also supplemental food for different governmental programs, and then beyond. So this is the marketing strategy that we're looking at now. The plan is to get demos out, have people be comfortable with them, see how they work. Work into schools, so I'm very passionate about educating kids about the benefits of not only being self-sustainable, the technology that goes into it, but I think there's a lot to seeing a plant start from a seed and then grow, just for a kid to be able to see that. So working with schools from there, organically growing media, working with local news outlets and niche outlets to be able to just get the word out and how we're trying to help educate our children, but then have that kind of flow over into the everyday consumer. And then of course with our platforms, doing geographically targeted marketing based on our demographic or our demo locations. And then Kickstarter was another part of it that we're kind of changing a little bit or reconsidering how we're going to go to market now. So thank you. That's the gist of it. And these are the 3 challenge questions that I've decided to ask today.
All right. So I'll be moderating. Thank you. And when people ask questions or give feedback, just raise your hand. I'll call on you. Please keep your responses short, simple, to the point, and positive.
Are you planning is your product going to be certified organic at the start, or is that something you're looking at later?
Well, there's a lot involved with doing that, even if you are organic. So we'll kind of develop into that. There's certification processes and inspection processes and just time that goes into that. So ultimately we want to do that, and our pods have a yes. The answer is yes. We do longer term, plan on doing that.
And then, what's the impact of not having an app on your second question there? So,
Sure.
all the technology stuff looks really cool. I want one, but app development is expensive too. That's probably why you have that question. So, what's the trade-off that consumers would face if you don't roll out an app from day one?
Sure. So that's a good question. Not much. The way I've designed this and put a lot into it is that it can work with a simple press of a button. It can hook up to the internet or not hook up to the internet. We want everybody to be able to use it and to be able to monitor it as technically as they'd like to. So they'll still be able to have the unit function, but they won't have a pretty app to be able to turn the lights on a certain amount, or to make the fans come on a certain bit, or have notifications on their smartphone for the water to come up. So they'll be able to still monitor those things just with the unit itself. So
Yeah. So, my personal perspective is I don't think that would affect my buying decision from the outset. I think it sounds very easy to use and manageable without the app. The app is nice icing. And then of course the poor man's app is always a responsive website, right? Where you can monitor remotely, you just won't get those push notifications or have tight integration.
thank you.
And two questions. Your grow pods, do they include seeds, or is just a soil medium with fertilizer?
That's a good question. So we plan on providing the seeds that we curate that are dwarf varieties, so they grow smaller. A lot of people say, how can you grow tomatoes and eggplants and things like that? They actually have dwarf varieties. And then we'll also be able to provide seedless pods, so that way people can experiment and grow whatever seeds that they'd like.
Second question, you showed that it has basically a 1 foot or 1 foot square footprint, and you've got 3 shells going up. What are your price ranges or price points on that? Because you said you had done some research and you thought at first it was too high. Do you have a range that you're considering? Because I'm thinking about your third question here, would you buy one? People have to ask price
Sure.
range.
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now we want to retail for $11.99.
$11.99. And what do you get for
No,
that?
$1,199. So that's 4 shells.
Okay,
yeah, for
that's
$11.99. You got it wrong.
I'm thinking it's modular, you get a smaller.
Well, so no, that's something we did look at, was making it stackable, but
Right.
that goes against our core vision. There's plenty of tabletop units out there that you can just, if you
Okay.
want to grow a couple things, you can. SARS is a higher production, but so $11.99, but we think we can scale that down to $8.99 very, very quickly.
If everyone could say their name and the company that they're with before they give the response, that'd be great. Right there in the back.
Isabel Harmon with Yellowbird Ghostwriter. I, as a person who likes to cook and I do like to grow, my only concern, and maybe you answered it and I didn't hear it, is root rot in your concept here. How do you manage that, and sanitizing the
Sure, it's a good question. So we provide a specific amount of water that essentially is wicked up inside of a small pot, you could say, to the substrate. The roots never leave that, and they only get the water that they need. So the way that the wick works, it can't oversaturate the roots.
Okay, so in terms of sanitizing though, I wanted to change what I'm growing. Is it just soap and water sanitize to clean it
Yeah, you
out?
could just wash out with soap and water, so the pots will come out themselves. When you take out one of the plants, you'll see just all the roots growing around themselves kindly. It's really neat and clean, and it's easy.
Tony?
How many units are in production at this time, or out in the field?
So we're not to market yet. So
Okay.
we have 2 demo units that are out there to get people's interest. And I guess to speak to that, we had a different kind of launch strategy where we wanted to take some time to build up email lists, do a lot of prep to launch on Kickstarter. But we're going back to I'm going to take a different route at this point. But so there's 2 out there now.
What's your production time per unit? How long does it take to make each unit?
About 4 to 6 hours.
Okay. So
And that's just by hand.
Sure.
So that's, once we get into production, which was part of the strategy to launch, we get into the supply chain management, and we have different, suppliers that come in, and we can cut that down to about 15 minutes.
Because to your question about how do I get in front of investors, a lot of investors, they like the proof of concept, but they want to see that you already have units in the field, that they're operating, that you already have customers.
Sure.
And I know it's a chicken and egg question, but if you can get even a dozen units out, say in the next couple of months, to show that they're operational, that you have customers, investors want to see that before they see anything else, because then they see, okay, there's a demand. If you in a 30-day period you sold 12 units, and you're getting feedback from those 12 customers who are sitting there saying, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen, that goes a long way to attracting investors. Because so many people, especially on the East Coast, are like, they're apprehensive about giving even a dime before they see something really like has it popularity.
Makes sense.
Russ?
Was curious about what the company itself, the size of it, and what's the background of yourself? Is it product development, or is it horticulture and nurseries?
So we have 3 executives right now. So myself, CEO, CSO, who has over 10 years of growing experience. He actually works out west with different growing operations. And then we also have a CTO, has another 10 years of experience on, and he really, puts the technical aspects together, from just the basic nuances of coding to working with PCB suppliers, things like that. We also have 4 advisors, from finance to botany. Our botanist advisor is actually a CSO of a local major grower in Virginia. Has over 40 years of experience. Another 25 in product development and IP, and then also strategy. I guess you could say is the 4th one. It's mostly just strategy. Who's been successfully involved in, I think, about half a dozen startups. Each one of those other advisors have been involved with at least 3 startups. This is my first startup. My background is actually, I was a financial advisor in private corporate banking. So I just saw, this just really spoke to me as a real need that needs to be solved. And the only solution that there was, that I saw, was GMO, technology. So I had to learn kind of each little bit and become an expert kind of all things, but still surround myself with individuals to be able to balance, what I need to do and what the business needs to do, run to operate.
Right here.
Alan Anderson, sales assistants. I have 2 thoughts. One is in case you're looking for investing, somebody, I may have heard of it here, angel.co is for angel investors. I understand that that's one where you can get angels. And my other thought was that this would appear to me to be something that could be sold through the Facebook advertising. Have you considered that at all?
Yeah, yes, that's a great idea. We have we have all the plant making platforms right now on all social media. That's a great idea. Could you write that maybe the angel
Yes.
CEO?
Right here.
Ken Portnoy, Glide Path Financial. On your second question about the app, it occurs to me to turn it around on its head. The app connectivity to the cloud gives you a direct link to each unit in the field. And so, for example, you could tell when they went offline and somebody threw it in the closet. And there's a gazillion kinds of data that you might be interested in collecting centrally about your product out in the field that could be really important to your product development that'll come through that path. So that's another consideration for you to throw in the hopper about that app.
Absolutely, that's a good idea.
Of course, getting the sensors and the feedback stuff, that's all going to include development costs and production costs. I think thinking about.
Thank you.
Right here.
Maya Shenandoah, I'm with the TCPR school. So I was looking at your product online. I didn't see it because you're new. And I do see a lot of others. I do see a lot of other products similar to this. Have you done some kind of comparison to see what makes yours stand out and the pricing and everything?
Sure.
Because someone who wants to buy, like I'm interested in this, but I would want to do my research as well to see, you know, what's out there. Am I getting the best product?
Yeah, so certainly have done competitive research, looked at different companies. There's
What makes you stand out?
So the main thing that would make us stand out is the amount of technology that we're putting into our unit. Also, our price point is lower. There's only a couple other companies that have anything that has this production level, and just the footprint. So they're larger, they cost more, and they don't have the technology integrated, and they're also not organic.
Sarah Jo with Sprint. I think the schools would be a great way to start, in my opinion, specifically science centers. There's one out in Fairfax, Fairfax Mall, and it's a very small footprint, and they're looking to expand in Dulles as well. But their whole space is kind of like the whole size of this, and they have small animals and things like that. But going out to that market just to get that research out, I think would be a great start. Because I don't have a green thumb, and the concept of putting a button on there would be great. But by putting it in the science centers that are more in depth to IoT and things like that, I think would be a great start for you as well.
Thank
And
you.
I could put you in contact with them.
I would love that. I appreciate that.
I have a question.
Name and business.
It's regarding the.
Can you speak up, please?
Name and business first.
Amy Lang. I'm working on a high-tech startup, artificial intelligence. I have some comments on the number 3. Would I buy it? So I think two things. If it's low care, you need a sensor, right? So sensor, I think the most two important thing. One is the light, and the other one is the moisture. So the moisture depends on what kind of plant you're playing in, then you'll be able to censor or manually adjust how much moisture you should be come into the pot, right?
Mhm.
So your sensor is very automated, or you have to like have manually control, or you don't have sensor at all.
So we do have, so there are sensors, and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to worry about that. So you don't have
So
to
the
worry about.
sensor will know what kind of plant you're playing in.
So it's a couple things. So the sensors and also just the algorithm to be able to feed the water itself.
But if you don't know what plant is in the pot, how can you use the algorithm? So you must know what plant you plant into the pot, and then when you change the plant, then kick off the algorithm to give the moisture accordingly.
Yeah. So that's a
you
good
have
point.
a sensor to see what the plant is inside the pot. I don't believe so.
We provide just a certain amount of water in each tray, and we know what the rate of the plant uptake is,
Okay.
just overall.
Okay.
So it's actually it's pretty simple. If it just a wick just wicks the water up, and then replenishes the water on a regular basis. So it makes it easy for you, the user. All you have to do is just add water to the base once a month. That's literally all you have to
that's
do.
the part I understand. You probably have a repository for the water. Yeah, so you basically sense the how much moisture in the soil, then which is based on what you're just talking about is based on a rule or that every plant request a similar moisture in the soil. But I'm not a not expert. I think some plants need more moisture in the soil.
You're right.
So you
Yeah.
sense the soil will not be able to feed all kinds of different plants. So that could be something you need to look into. So when you advertising saying stress free, maybe not the truth. So when people buy a pot, so the technology is in the pot, and when they start plant anything they want, maybe not a good fit, and some plants need a more moisture soil, then it's not going to grow well.
That's absolutely
then
right.
it will
Yep.
fail your advertising.
Thank you. That's a very good
and
point.
another one
We
is
don't,
that
we don't want to get too technical. So technical
Well, I'd love
stuff,
more.
move it
If you
to
have
the
more
end.
questions, I'd love to connect with you after. And
yeah,
talk
we
more.
can talk later. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
In the back?
Hi, Bruce Crispino, Gravity. Very interesting product. I'm a gardener. You might want to reach out to, in Virginia, they're called master gardeners. Every state has a state federal program that they run, a master gardening program that are associated with land-grant universities. To an earlier point, I think they would be great people to set these up with because they can really give you a lot of feedback on practical gardening that they experience in that region. Also, what they see, they're required to train people. So they spend a lot of time with the community and they can really give you some feedback on what they're hearing and seeing in the community as well. They're very easy to find. If you go to the Master Gardener program, you can Google every one of them. Virginia, Maryland.
Yeah, I'd
And
love to
then
look into that, find out more about that. Maybe we can talk and I can get some.
Yeah, I'll give you my contact. And in terms of getting in front of investors, I think, I'm not sure who made the point earlier. As a fellow entrepreneur, capital is hard on the East Coast, but if you have an executive on the West Coast, that's probably a better place to look for this early stage kind of investments. And certainly, for more on the organic side, more on the consumer-centric side, there are going to be family offices and organizations that really focus on that, and you'd have a better beat on that just being on the West Coast.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Go, John, real quick.
John with Fishing Explorer. First, I love your logo. I love your shirt. It's so nice, Tristan. But you said you came from a banking community. You know, it's a lot of ventures who I mean, lean to your community and look. There's going to be if there's not somebody already in your community, somebody that may know your community. You might have already done this, but if you haven't, I mean, you start reaching out there. My question for you though is, have you done anything that talks about plant? I mean, you mentioned production. Like production but what's production from an ROI standpoint? As somebody who is, like a home chef, passively interested in something like this, $1,100 buys a hell of a lot of basil.
Sure.
So so I just that being said, there's the appeal of being able to grow your own and maintain your own. I mean, is there an ROI piece to? I mean, have you considered putting that into play for those of us on the fence?
And I get feedback on that. Thank you. So the average consumer spends anywhere from $300 to about $126 a year in fresh produce. So if you look at the cost of this, it can be able to pay for itself in maybe 2 to 3 years, depending on your consumption. And it's not going to be able to provide all of your fresh produce needs, but it's going to be able to provide a very, very significant amount.
Sorry to follow up on that.
Sure.
Does it become, from an urban standpoint, does it become a luxury to have, or a kind of a, or a supplement? Does this reduce and supplement what I'm doing, or is it a luxury item? Meaning, I have one, you covet one.
Sure. So
It's not. There's just different marketing approaches to this.
Absolutely. So we want to start it off. It's going to be more an early adopter, higher earner, but we see it as being as common as a refrigerator or toaster. And then combining that with a networking ability. So let's say people don't want to invest in this unit and they don't want to buy one. They'll be able to get same day delivery from a certified grower that's within our network. They get to right down the hall in their building. So that's that's part of the vision. We just want to put as many plants out there as possible.
Maya Shenandoah again. Have you thought about going in front of restaurants?
Sure. Yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I can definitely see those. A few restaurants.
Ken Portnoy, Glide Path Financial. You sort of put your hand over the cannabis item on your screen. I don't think you'll get in legal trouble talking about it. I bet you could move 50 units on a weekend at a street fair at a $500 price point in the District of Columbia. Your personal growth is legal, and it's a high value, right, produce. And so that would get you the feedback for your investors. In Chicago several years ago, the self-brewing stores were selling full rigs for cannabis growers under the wire because they didn't say cannabis.
Yeah.
And it's a huge market, and it's the kind of early adopter, high value produce that could drive your business through these early phases.
You're right. You're
Relatively
absolutely right.
easily.
Sure.
So I take the path of least resistance.
Absolutely. Russ.
Russ McIntosh, Vision Idea Design. You mentioned to get in front of investors, have you want to think about focusing on one specific? Because when you did your presentation, you had your demo models, you had the little plant that come with the seeds in there, and then you had other ones available, and then you can purchase live from Amazon or what have you. To get in front of investors, why not just focus on one thing like the demo model, the target model, and we'll get to those once we get the investments, and then we can open up the other branches of the smaller containers, the ordering online.
That makes sense. That's a good idea.
Sarah Jones, Sprint. Out of curiosity, the footprint is tight, and you had mentioned the dwarf seeds. What are actually, can I grow? Is it dwarf pumpkin? Like what kind of variety of produce is your market? Because it seems as it's much concentrated on the herbs side as opposed to actual larger produce. So what range is the sweet spot that you're really looking at?
So that's a great question. Thank you. Herbs and leafy greens, obviously, but also tomatoes, baby eggplants, baby cucumbers, even baby squash varieties, things like that. So we want to delve more into the fruiting varieties later on. We really want to be able to develop our own seeds. And dwarf seeds are really cool. You can go through 1,000 iterations of trying to breed and develop a dwarf variety, and you only get one from that. So there's existing seeds that are out there to be able to support this model of this smaller plant variety that's shorter. But we really want to start developing longer term. I mean, that's one of the dreams of the company. But so there's a wide array of things you can grow.
So sorry. So with the seeds, you're saying that you have to. Where would they get the seeds? Could they, after the plants that they grow, could they take those seeds and replant them?
Well, hopefully they'll just buy more pods from us, but they could technically. But the seeds will come in, already in the pod. But they could, a plant produces a seed.
Right.
So they could themselves, if they want to go through the trouble, they could harvest the seeds themselves. Sure.
John?
So I think, so just kind of addressing your first question, getting customer validation is going to be key to even just investors kind of look at. So what sort of customer validation? I know you said 2 demo products that are demo units that are out there, and just thinking about like how you can get. So the next step could be pilot for the audience that you potentially pilot with, and so I think a lot of that ideas provide mentioned about science schools and even like grocery stores, or where you can have a lot of the traffic that you have the unit out there, and so just kind of thinking along the ways of how you can have some of this more pilot, getting some pilot customers out there, so you can get your name out, you can get some visibility and some marketing.
So we put one in it, started off with a gym, and we had pretty much right away, even before we started growing, really, really good feedback. It was a more affluent community, but still. So I could have, and everybody being an entrepreneur here, they're probably say, what are you doing? So they said, I want to buy one. And so I decided to not sell them right then. And that seems counterintuitive, and it's probably was the dumbest thing that I did. But I wanted to get to a point where I could have a sleek production, clean model. I knew what it took to get that, and I wanted to start there first. before I kind of just start, in my mind, spitting them out. But I'm going back to that to say, look, if I'm going to make this a business, I need to make it a business. I need to go out there and take those orders and sell them. And then it'll get better and better and better as I go. So that's a really good point.
Tony?
Okay, Tristan, you made mention earlier about what the cost is. I don't know what your, what your pricing, but I don't know what your cost is per unit. But let me ask you a quick question, and it'll lead to a second question. Where do you see your highest margin of profit? Is it in providing the seeds on a regular basis, or is it selling the actual units?
So that's a great question. So the highest profit margin is definitely the pods.
Okay.
So it's like cured cups for.
Right. So do this then. Do the HP printer model. All right. Lease the units, or don't even charge for the units themselves. All right. Charge $75, $80 a month. Okay. That includes a regular delivery of the pods. It includes the delivery of the unit. You'll get more and more people sign it because $75 to $80 a month is nothing. They won't think about that at all. What will end up happening is you'll start getting more and more flow, because what investors are looking for, they're not looking about what your profit margin is per unit. What they're looking at is your recurring revenue. And if you're sitting there and putting together a model where they know you're going to have, say, 10,000 people over the next 2 years ordering these units, okay, and they're paying $75, $80 a month. Simple math, they're looking at that and saying, okay, that's a growing revenue model. Investors like that, okay? Because putting out there, oh, buy in this catalog or buy online this unit for $1,000 and then pay after that, they're not gonna like that. Even though the largest profit margin is in your pods, but if you calculate out that the unit itself will pay for itself in the first year, and because these people are recurring, a recurring customer,
Sure.
it just grows the customer base that much.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
In the back?
Ms. Alfarman, Gellerberg, Ghostwriter. I just have two comments. One, you had mentioned that to get your product out, you wanted to start in schools.
Yes.
My only concern with that is what kind of school? Because a lot of schools, they don't cook their lunch in the school anymore. So is that a concern of yours? And the second is, have you considered marketing this as an appliance and partnering with builders to put these in their model homes?
So the second question, yes. First question, it's a good question about the cafeteria. There's a lot of really great programs that are going on right now that have to do with exercise, nutrition, and things like that. They're getting funding through the state. And this is more of an educational system. It's not so much designed at this point, even though there's been interest in cafeteria becoming sustainable and providing fresh herbs for the kids and things like that. But it's more of an educational tool rather than a nutritional supplement for the schools. Thank you.
We've got time for about one or two more questions, comments. John?
Thank you. John Riedenberg, CCC Solutions. First, I just want to emphasize what Tony said. The business model is the key, and getting those units into the hands of users so they're getting pods is everything. Second, when you had your slide up, so that goes to investors, okay? When you had your slide up relating to number 2, that talked about your markets. They seem to be more geographic or product oriented. And so I'd like to then highlight what this gentleman to my left said about markets, that cannabis and who you're kidding is a much easier market right now to penetrate and probably reach certain investors for.
You're right.
Because you have, forget that yours are for small plants at the moment. I've read that cannabis grows taller than perhaps 12 inches. I don't really know that.
Yeah.
But I've read it. And so I recommend that you look, because it can't be difficult to have a second model, same footprint. And then it takes me to find 20 urban millennials that you can put this in immediately and build out 20 units. Because your most likely investor right now are friends and family.
Thank you.
And fools.
No, cannabis it's almost as good as sex. Those things sell.
Hi, Brooke Walker with Cox Business. I run a farm, so I love it, and I do not have a great thumb, even though I grew up. So pushing a button sounds really easy. So, that's what I really trying to do. But I think that, yes, I think I would buy it. I think for me, maybe the price point, because I'm not an avid gardener or anything like that, but I like Tony's where you have the month to month. I can handle that more.
Yeah.
I think if you find an influencer on Instagram who does videos or something like that, who's like an at-home chef, there's all kinds of bloggers out there that do that, that you could put one of these in their house for, for free maybe, just for them to try it out. That could give you some recognition and some followers as well. That might help kickstart your investors and all your models. And I like that you didn't just go ahead and sell your first model or when that came. I think that shows who you are and what you believe in, and I think that's really great that you're not going to put something out there until you're 100% sure it's right.
Yeah.
So I think that's great.
Thank you so
good
much.
job. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. No more time. Sorry.
Please write your questions down on your card.
Everybody please write down, there's a lot of good questions. Can you write it down so I can maybe just connect with you real quick and get that from you?
So I have one last question. So my question is, first of all, I really like your product, and I think that you're gonna be a millionaire. So I'm gonna give you my account number and everything, so you can. No, but my last question is, what can our 1 Million Cups community do for you?
So it's a good question. This is my first kind of interaction with Million Cups. Well, been a few times. I guess just staying connected. So just I love to share my information with you, learn more about what you guys are doing in your business, and anything that comes up, just let me know. I love to be able just to chat every once in a while if you guys have an interest, or send a quick email note or whatever it might be. But I'm just looking for honest feedback and just collaboration. I love talking to like-minded individuals, whether you're an expert or interested in gardening, but just entrepreneurship and just whatever your passion is. So just staying connected and giving me ideas, and hopefully we can feed off each other.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sure everyone here is kind of inspired. I live in a condo, and I'll be honest with you, I kind of, when I saw the image, I was like, yeah, I could fit one of those in. That's kind of neat. So on behalf of 1 Million Cups, we'd like to present you with the 1 Million Cups from the Rockland Foundation. All right, and I think you'll probably end up getting a collection of these as you go from chapter to chapter. Thank you very much for your time today. All right, great. All right. So we have a few little announcements. One thing I'd like to separate real quick though is the